Hello my dear friends, my name is Sanne and welcome back to another beauty video. Today I have for you another 3 looks 1 palette, one of my favorite types of videos to do, and we're just immediately gonna dive into it. I have for you today the Root Cosmetics Freshly Cut Flower Child palette. This is an eyeshadow and pressed pigment palette by Root Cosmetics within their Flower Child collection. I think it has at this moment 3 eyeshadow palettes and 8 lip tint shades. You've already seen a video of me swatching all the different lip tints a few weeks ago, but today I want to dive into the eyeshadow palette that belongs to the collection. As always, Root Cosmetics packaging is so extremely cute and detailed and fun and just, you know, fun to look at. Like, look at this 70s vibe, floral, fun colored packaging. It's so cute. It's totally up my alley. On the back we have all the different shades, you know, just some basic information. Root Cosmetics is cruelty-free and this product is vegan as well, which we're very happy with. And honestly, Root Cosmetics is one of my favorite budget makeup brands at this moment. Just so you know, they did send this palette to me in PR. This video is not sponsored whatsoever, but I did receive this palette for free to try out, so I'm very, very happy that they sent it to me, but that will not influence my opinions on products whatsoever. Okay, so when we take the palette out of the box, we have the same very fun packaging on the outside of the palette, and then we can open this baby up with a little protective sheet, of course, and we see a collection of beautiful, colorful, very, very fun spring vibe shades. We also have a mirror over here. But yeah, these are the shades. We have 30 shades in total, and I mainly notice a lot of pinks and purples, quite a few more neutrally orangey tones over here, and we have some blues, but we basically have a little bit of everything. I already swatched all of the shades, so I will put them all on the screen right now so you can have a look at that as well. So far, most of the mattes are very buttery and creamy and soft, which is exactly how I like my mattes. And the shimmers are also very creamy, honestly, but they're just basic, simple metallics. They're not like glittery shimmers the way I like them. These are personally not like my personal favorite type of shimmer. Usually when I would do a makeup look with a shimmer like this, I would use the shimmer and then would grab one of my singles from Chaos Dirt, for example, to add on top of, just so we can have a bit more sparkle and glitter and not just a metallic sheen. But you know, that's just personal preference, honestly. This is just the type of shimmer. I just prefer the glittery, all over the place, sparkly stuff instead of the metallic stuff. But I must say the shimmers do look very nice. So we have 18 mattes and 12 shimmers, which I think is a pretty decent division. You know, you need about like close to 50-50, like 60-40. And I prefer having a few more mattes than shimmers. So far, the only thing that I'm noticing about the color store is that we have a few shimmers over here, especially the purples, that are quite deep and that don't really have a deep matte shade that matches with it. So that does make it a tiny bit more difficult for me in my brain to use. Like, you don't really have an easy combination for it. But you know, it can also be very fun to use. We'll see. Like I said, this is a 3 looks 1 palette video. So I'm gonna do 3 looks. And I drew out all of these looks ahead of time. And I somehow managed to put in basically every single shade in this palette, so that means we use 10 shades in each look. I don't know if we'll manage, if it does anything. I just hope it will turn out good. Anyway, we have 3 looks. They're a bit like color based. I want to do a look with focusing on the pinks and the purples. I want to do a look focusing on the neutrals and a look focusing on like the blues. So that's what we're gonna do, and I think I'm just gonna dive into look number 1, which will be the blue look. So far I have my base makeup ready and I have primed my eyes using the Milani eyeshadow primer. I use this eyeshadow primer every single day, so it would just be weird for me to review a makeup palette without a primer, because that's just not how I would use it in real life, so it will not get an honest review like of how I would use the palette and if I enjoy using it in the way I use it. You know what I mean? All of the swatches that I did that I showed you before are done with dry fingers on dry skin. No base, no concealer, no nothing. Just dry skin on dry skin basically. Just so you know how those performed. But we can dive into the first shade. I need to I need my notebook here because there's just gonna be a lot going on. I'm gonna dive into the shade Hydrangea, which is a beautiful light blue. And I'm gonna apply that in the outer corner over here. That's quite pigmented for a pastel shade, you know? I do feel like on my skin it looks a bit more bright than it does in the pan. In the pan it gives more of like a muted jeans shade, and then on my skin it looks like almost a bright blue. I'm just gonna apply most of the shades, not blend out too much, but because we have so many shades going on, I first want to apply them and then slowly, bit by bit, blend them together to keep it contained and not go overboard too much with the blending. So then I'm gonna dive into shade 3, which is Forget Me Not. I numbered all the shades for my notes, so that's why I say that. But this shade is a beautiful like teal shade. That's very cute. The pigmentation is wild. Do you see that? Like that takes absolutely no effort. Okay, then we have shade 19, which is Gentian. I'm very curious because I don't know, like all of these shades are named after flowers. Ooh, that's cute. It's like the little pastel version of the previous one. I feel like this one turns up less bright on my skin than it does in the pan. And then lastly, I'm going for this matte blend that we got going on over here. I'm going into shade Greenhouse, which is bright green. This looks so fun. Oh yeah, that's very cute. This color story immediate, it seems perfect for springtime, you know? So I'm just building up that color. And because we're working with such light shades, we can pretty easily blend it, I feel like. Just making sure I keep the pigmentation in the crease going. I feel like I can build up these shades quite well. And so far, of course, they're very light shades, so the blending will not be too complicated. But so far, it seems good. Very workable. I feel like Gentian, we're like blending her away a tiny bit. Like she's not really sticking very well. Turning a bit patchy. That's a bit too bad. Let's do mattes on the lower lash line. So I'm going into the shade Lavender, which is going a bit more towards the blue side instead of like greenish tones. Like so far, most of the blues that we used were pretty much on the greenish side. It's a very, very, very cute shade, honestly. Okay, so this look uses 9 shades. We have 5 done. I feel like there's only the shimmers left. That's really not that bad. I'm just going to move a bit more of the shade Hydrangea onto the lid. And now I'm going to grab the shade Water Drop on my fingers, because that's my preferred way of application. I'm going to apply that right next to it. And it blends perfectly into that matte. It just doesn't stick that well yet. The shimmers, they're metallics, they're quite tight packed into the pan. So I may have to put in a tiny bit of effort. And then to move more into that green area, we're going into the shade Moss, which looks so beautiful. It's like the perfect sea green, seafoam green. And it has like a golden-ish shimmer to it. Applying that right next to it on the inner corner of the lid. I do feel like we're already getting a tiny bit of hard pan in those shimmers. I'm not gonna lie. Maybe because they are already so tight packed. So I'm gonna try and apply with a brush a bit. Maybe if I use a bit more of a fluffier brush for that, the shimmer will be less tight packed on the lid as well. For some formulas that definitely helps, so I feel like that does help a little bit. I am quite sad about the Gentian shade because it just fades away and now it just looks like I'm missing a patch of color over there. So that's not my favorite shade. Yeah, I think these shimmers might be even better applied with a brush than your fingers. I think it's too tight packed in the pan. and then it will be difficult to get it from your finger onto your lid basically, because you have to press into the pen, so roughly. And then I'm gonna grab a bit of an angled liner brush, and I'm gonna go into shade Bluebell, and we're gonna apply that over here on the lower lash line, because this is the purple shimmer out of the three that is a bit more blue toned, and I thought it would work maybe well with the blue on the lower lash line. The mattes I'm having fun with. The shimmers look nice, but I think I might try using a glitter primer on the other eye, see if that improves it. They're definitely not the worst, it's just I'm used to a bit more of like a flakier formula that's less tight pressed in the pan, so I feel like it's easier to use just for me from what I'm used to. So far, a tiniest bit of fallout, not too bad, mainly from that purplish shade that I'm using right now. But yeah, loving these blue pastels over here. Those are very, very cute. And that green one, lovely. And then all that's left is an inner corner highlight. So I'm going into shade Dandelion. And I'm gonna apply that. See, that is a bit more of a wetter formula. And it's a way more flaky and less tight pressed. And you can immediately see how easy that is to apply. And those are the kind of formulas that I really, really love. So we have this very colorful blend done. And I will quickly do the same thing on the other eye. Finish up the look at what I want to add. And then I'll be right back with you with the finished look. Alright, I am back with the finished look. Just some details on what I've added. I've added Kiss My Lash Better Lashes in the style All Mine. And then on the lips I'm wearing a Cara Beauty Line Up Lip Liner in, I always forget this. I think this is Claudia. And then the Vibe Out Liquid Lip Polish in Helena, I think. So that's the lip combo. This is the finished look. I'm loving the little pastel shades. As you know, I'm a pastel lover. I was gonna say something a bit less PG, but I think this look is extremely cute. I do think so far some of the mattes are absolutely beautiful. They layer so well. They're so pigmented. Gorgeous. Some other ones a bit less. Like so far, I'm not going to be writing home that this is my favorite new palette. The quality is definitely giving budget brand so far, but still a lot of pigmentation, easy to blend, beautiful shades. That inner corner highlight is also beautiful. So far it's good and enjoyable, but I'm not screaming it off the roofs that I'm loving it, you know? So yeah, that's so far the first 9 shades. 21 more to go. And I'll see you when I'm doing look number 2. Okay, so for the second look, I want to dive into the purple and pink shades of this palette. And especially this one, Carnation, I'm really excited about. That's such a beautiful coral shade. Can't wait to use that. I'm gonna dive first into shade Water Lily, which is a bit of a brighter pink. Gonna put that into the outer corner of the crease, I guess. Kind of work it into the crease. It's not extremely pigmented, but I feel like you can build it up a tiny bit. And then I go into shade Sakura, that light pink shade, and use that as a transition shade. This one is quite crumbly and has quite some fallout. It's also immediately visible in the pan and immediately forms like little crumbs. But it blends really easily. 2 shades down, there's some beautiful pink going on my lid. Then I want to get into shade Blackberry, which is a deep purplish pink. Put that in the outer corner. And I'm gonna drag that underneath the eye as well. Okay, so far the blending is going really well. It's really easy, but I also feel like the shades are not extremely pigmented, you know? They're decently buildable, but like Water Lily is not even close to being the bright pink that it seems to be in the pan. Then I'm gonna go into shade number 12, which is Lilac. Blend that one here in the inner corner of the crease. But I feel like I may have already applied a bit too much of the Sakura shade there, so you don't see much of a difference. Because I feel like that could be just a really nice neutral color. Yeah, just blending that over here in that inner corner a bit. So I got the main blend going on. And then I want to get into shade Amaryllis. Gonna apply that right here next to Blackberry. This is a beautiful bright pink. But again, I feel like just isn't as bright as I expected it to be. Maybe I'm just not using the right primer for this, but I don't know. Now I just quickly want to make a little half cut crease. So I'm going in with some concealer and a flat brush, and I'm just tapping that into the shape that I want. Okay, we have our little half cut crease going on. So now I'm gonna go back in with that Amaryllis shade and blend that on that edge of where we applied the cut crease. It really is just not as deep as I would want it. Okay, then we get to shade 8. We're finally getting to Carnation. Beautiful coral shade that I wanted to try. Putting that right next to it. See, that one has pigment immediately. It's a really pretty shade. Then we get to shade Petunia, which is our first shimmer that we're gonna apply. Apply that right next to Carnation. I feel like maybe just the formulas in this palette aren't really for me. Like the mattes are a bit too crumbly and the shimmers are a bit too stuck, too not crumbly enough. So I'm struggling a bit getting to work them the way I want to, because this is just not a formula that I am, you know, very familiar with, that I really enjoy using. And then for the inner corner bit, we're gonna jump into Orchid, one of the more flakier shimmers. So this one is a bit more up my alley. I feel like the mattes just aren't really working the way I want them to. So I feel like they're blending away a tiny bit. But again, there's quite a bit of fallout. So do keep an eye on that. And now that we have the top part ready, we're going to move into the lower lash line a bit more. So I'm going to go into shade Allium. So I do want to focus a bit more on the purples for this lower lash line. Well, the pigment is there, there's just not quite a lot of shimmer in my opinion. It's maybe a bit too satiny for my taste. And then we take shade Iris. This is a very purpley shimmer, and I'm putting that over here in the inner corner of the lower lash line. And I think I'm just gonna go in with a tiny brush. It's slightly more fluffier just so I can blend that a bit more. So I'm going back into that Allium shade. But these just aren't the most super sparkly shades. They're pretty metallic. Just that one, that's stunning, the Orchid one. It's like a beautiful glitter. I like that one a lot. And then I kind of want to go in with that shade Allium again. The one we used here in the center. And I want to try and line this cut crease that we created. Don't know how well it works, but we'll see. Okay, now I have a tiny bit more of that purple on the lower lash as well. Honestly, I don't think you can even see that Petunia shade over here anymore. That's just blended away. Plus, again, so much fallout. And then finally, I want to go into the shade Hyacinth. And I'm putting that on the inner corner. And then that's it. And I feel like I expected it all to be a bit more. It's not my favorite. It's a bit patchy. The pigment just isn't completely there, like the way I expected it to be. The formula, like, I think it's just the formula not being what I'm used to, so I don't really know exactly how to work with it. It's just a bit too dry and crumbly for what I'm used to. So it's just not really working with me right now. I think that is mainly the issue. But if you're into a bit more of a drier formula, this could be perfect for you. I'm going to do the other eye, add everything that I want to add to it, and then I'll be right back with you with the finished look. Okay, I am back with the finished look. I added the Colourpop Flexitarian Super Shock Highlighter. The lashes are by The Action. The Bonjolie lashes in Glam, I think. Then on the lips I'm wearing a Blend Bunny Creamy Lip Liner. It doesn't say what shade because they never added shade names. And then we have on top the Cara Beauty Lip Lock Color Balm in Venus. I think for the previous look, I was pretty impressed with how some of like the pastel shades performed and such. But with this look, I feel like I was very underwhelmed. I was just missing some pigmentation. It's so blendable. The shades are very, very blendable. Very easy to work with in general. But I was just missing a lot of pigmentation. Plus there was so much fallout. But it might just be that it needs a bit more of a wet base. A sticky base. I'm using a pretty dry eyeshadow base. Because the Milani eyeshadow primer, it like dries out, forms a dry layer. That works usually with most of the formulas that I have, but maybe this formula just needs a bit of a tackier base. But I just felt a tiny bit disappointed in how much pigmentation I could get. I still like the look I created, it's just not one of my favorites. So far, we've had about 2/3 of the palette done. Just 1/3 of the shades left. So let's quickly get into the final look. So for the final look, I want to try and get through most, if not all, of the neutral shades in here. So like the orangey shades and the golden shades. So I'm going to try and use them all. And this is the makeup look that I'm using for inspiration, just for the shape. So that's sort of the shape that we're going for. So yeah, let's just quickly get into it. And I'm going to go into shade Gladiolus, which is the deepest shade in the palette. Which is actually not that deep. So this is definitely like a pastel-y palette, but I'm gonna draw a bit of an eyeliner moment. And I'm doing the same on the lower lash. I feel like this really is not as deep of a shade as I would have hoped it was. And then we're gonna use like tiny brushes to build up different shades. So let's see what shade we have next. We're going into the shade Peony. And we're building that right next to this brown shade. And I'm first, I think, gonna build up all the different shades, especially the mattes, and then we'll blend a bit more later. Then we go into shade Clay Pot, which will go right over here, which is already a bit more orangey than the other neutrals that we just used. Then we're gonna go into the shade Rose. And I'm gonna apply that right over here, above the crease in the inner corner. That one actually has quite a bit of pigment. And then we'll build shade Sunflower, the bright yellow, over here in the inner corner. We're blending the same kind of thing on the lower lash line. I feel like between some shades there's not like a giant difference when you use them on the eye, but it's fine, we'll work with that. Then I'll go into the shade Tiger Lily, which I'll place right here. This is an orange. Then I'm gonna go in with a flat brush and some concealer, and we're gonna carve out the shape a bit. And then we'll go into the shade Tiger Lily again, the bright orange, and build that right here on the inner corner. So as you can see, we're using a lot of matte shades for this look. And then we'll go in with the shimmers. So first I'm going into shade Daffodil, which is the most brown shimmer. Put that right here. I think I gotta go in with some glitter primer, because this is not sticking at all. Which I personally don't mind using a glitter primer for shimmers if it makes them pop more, but I can imagine if you want a palette that is easily accessible, you don't want to always have to grab a glitter primer or whatever to make the products really work for you. So just keep that in mind. If you don't mind using glitter primer, then this is fine. Again, I'm going into the shade Jasmine. I'm sticking that right here next to the brown mattes that we applied. That is sticking a bit better now. And then we'll go into shade Daffodil. Put that right next to that. And then we'll go into shade Pollen, which is a golden shade. Oh, that is very bright. Kind of blend that into that orange matte that we have right there. The shimmers work really well with the glitter primer, so that is really nice. But like I said, if you don't like using glitter primer, then these shimmers I don't think are gonna perform the way you want them to. And then I'm just gonna apply the shade Daffodil underneath the eye as well. Daffodil is a bit more of a wet formula. The other shimmers seem to be a lot drier and more packed. And this one seems a bit more moldable in the pan as well, more like the Super Shock, Colourpop Super Shock formula. It's a bit squishy. Okay, so I'm just gonna go back in with some of the mattes just to make them pop a bit more. Okay, I have to say the mattes are really easy to blend. The shimmers actually look beautiful when you put them on top of a glitter primer, so that's also a pro. I'm just not very happy with this yellow here. It seems really patchy, but it might also be how it reacts with the base, because I feel like over here, where it's more on top of my concealer, it works better than over here, where I think there's not much base going on. But oh well. Anyway, that is the look. I'm just gonna repeat what I did on the other side, finish up the whole look, and then I'll be right back with you. Okay, I am back with the finished look. On my eyes, I'm wearing the Doe Baby Lashes in style Crazy in Love. On the lips, I'm wearing the Etude Retro Street lip gloss. And I'm wearing the Essence Major Glow Highlighter from the Choose Your Glow Highlighter palette. And then of course on the eyes, the Root Cosmetics Flower Child Freshly Cut palette. Let's talk about this palette for a tiny bit. As you probably noticed throughout this video, I was struggling sometimes a tiny bit with this palette. I feel like the formula is not exactly what I'm used to and what I really enjoy using. Some shades are worse than others. Of course, I do want to mention I did try to use almost every single shade. The only one we didn't use was Soil, this one, which is also just a neutral. And because I did try to use every single shade in these 3 looks, you can tell that I can only use the shade in like a tiny portion of the look. So it doesn't always completely represent the capabilities of that eyeshadow. But so far, what I do want to say, the mattes blend really well, really easily. Some deeper shades do have less pigment, or they look less deep on the eye than what I hoped for and what they look like in the palette to me. So this really is more of like a pastel-y spring type palette, which does fit the packaging and the collection very well, so it's not necessarily a complaint. I do think that for my more creative makeup looks, this won't be the palette that I'm grabbing, but for more everyday type of colorful makeup looks, I think this is more the palette for that. If you want something simpler, not always extremely pigmented, but still very easy to work with, then this would be the palette for you. The shimmers aren't exactly my favorite. They're very hard pressed, and they're not very shimmery or sparkly, which is not my preferred style of shimmer. Some of them are nice, like I feel like on my eyes over here, Pollen, the golden shade, looks really beautiful. Daffodil is also more of a formula that I enjoy, and then Orchid and Dandelion. Those are more like the sparkly shadows that I enjoy using, and the other shimmers are more like metallic, but they're just extremely hard pressed. Like I can see hard pan forming in most of the shades already, so that is a bit too bad. I think the color story is very fun. I think the shades work very well together. You can create some very fun looks with this. Quality wise and pigmentation wise, I would use this more as like an everyday, more simple, quick to grab palette than one that I would use for my creative looks. It isn't the best palette in my collection by far. Like if I need specific colorful shades, I will likely grab one of my other palettes before I grab this one. But I do think it's a very fun palette. I don't know if I would call it beginner friendly. Like usually if it has like slightly less pigment, I would call it more beginner friendly. But because some of the shades just really did not work very well with my primer, or at least I think it's because of my primer, I don't know if I would call them very beginner friendly. This is also by far not my favorite Root Cosmetics palette. I have other ones that perform way better and that I really love. But I am happy to have this in my collection and to use on a daily basis throughout spring and just have some very fun, colorful looks ready for spring. So all in all, I do approve, but not with the highest rating. I'd give it like a 7, maybe 6.5, 7. I don't usually do ratings, but I just want to explain my thoughts to you. So those are my thoughts on the Root Cosmetics Freshly Cut Flower Child palette. Again, the packaging, so cute, so fun, so colorful. I love it. Let me know if you have tried this palette or if you've tried other palettes by Root Cosmetics and what your opinions are. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. If you want to see even more from me, my Instagram is linked down below. I share all of my makeup looks, and that's gonna be it for me today. Anna, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Toodles!